In the hot sauce today, you may think you have a good grasp on what your child is up to, but what about their online activity? Social media is growing and so is its accessibility to children. So how do you keep yours safe from social media site dangers? We're joined right now by social media expert and board member of Buffalo's Social Media Club, Jason Malika. You have some great tips that parents are going to want to know about.
Absolutely. I think the one thing that we need to know about with social media is keeping kids safe nowadays. The availability of online networks have jumped so much with Wi-Fi and being able to get on a cell phone. Parents are allowing kids to have their own cell phones when they're younger and getting onto Wi-Fi. So the tips that we're going to offer up this morning, I think, can really help parents get a better understanding, a better grasp, and build trust between parent and child, too.
And one way you suggest doing that is actually writing down each of your expectations.
Yes, absolutely. I think I like to see parents and kids develop a social trust document for the household. Basically what this is you sit down and have a contract between your child and the parent saying, look, you can be on social networks from this time to this time, get your homework done first, grades need to be up to snuff. I know that sounds sort of old-fashioned, but I think the most important thing is kids want trust from their parents, and parents want to have the trust of their children. I think this helps develop that very, very early on, not just with social networks, but in life in general.
Absolutely. And our next one is that you're actually telling parents they should be requesting to see their child's social profile.
Yes, absolutely. You should have access. If you're a child, you're living under your parents' roof, and they need to have access to your social networks. They need to have access to the passwords, screen names, things like that, because in case of an emergency, in a worst case scenario, parents need to know what has been said, what's being said, whether it's bullying or there's a relationship that's not necessarily proper. Parents need to know what's going on right away, especially if it's something where they have to contact the authorities in an emergency.
And ages that we're talking about right now, what do you think for these rules?
Well, I think it stretches anywhere from 10, 11 years old, we are seeing kids that young on social networks.
Younger.
Exactly. To until you leave for college. And I know that sounds to be a little uncomfortable for teenagers, but I think the one thing that kids need to understand is while you're living at home, the more trust you have with your parents, you're going to have those battles as you get to be a teenager and, not wanting to, and kind of rebelling a little bit. But I think the more parents set that trust and sort of develop the trust a little bit more, kids and parents will have a little bit of a relationship, especially on social networks, too.
And especially with Facebook, we're seeing a lot of parents also become very active on Facebook. Is just friending your child enough, or do you also need to have their passwords?
You need to have their passwords. I think, excuse me, I think the one thing that I always find is you can follow someone on Facebook all you want. You're not always getting the full story. So unless parents and unless kids share their passwords and screen names with their parents or a guardian, you're not going to get the full story. You need to have full trust, and you need to have full access to your children's social profiles.
All right, so that's the virtual things you need to know about. Now we're talking about the technology itself.
Right.
Many parents may not realize that the technology you're buying your children, they can access the internet with it.
Absolutely. Just because you don't have a cell phone plan with Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, whatever, you can still access Wi-Fi. Not all Wi-Fi networks in a person's neighborhood or apartment complex or condo complex are protected. You can hook into a Wi-Fi signal and get Wi-Fi for free. So this is where parents need to understand that even if you don't have a cell carrier, you're still getting on in some way. Schools have Wi-Fi, malls have Wi-Fi, hotels have Wi-Fi. You can get on these networks for free. So I think that's where parents need to understand they need to have the privacy settings, go into a phone settings bank and say, where do I want my child to be able to have access? Do I want them while I'm with them to have their cell phone on and being able to talk more on there? If they don't, then they need to have the privacy settings set to the point where they can only access when a parent allows it to be.
And do you think that parents who are active on social networks themselves have better tools to keep their children safe? Or what do you think about the parents that say, no, I don't want to go on Facebook, that's not for me?
I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think there's such a problem that parents don't want to be on Facebook because, to each his own, I always say. However, if you see your child using social networks like Facebook, like Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, it's a responsibility as a parent to understand what they're doing. Read up a little bit. You don't have to be on Facebook, but I always recommend parents understand what your child is doing. You're going to keep up as much as possible what's going on academically with your child. You're trying to help them be a better student, a better person. Know what's going on with their social networks, because the more you know, the better you will be with your child and your kids.
And that goes for teachers too. This whole conversation we're having today was actually started from Teresa Weekly's story earlier in the week of the Lockport teacher that was opening this kind of discussion with his children. What do you think about that with his students?
I think it's a great example to showing kids, and I don't think teachers can do enough in that sense to show kids, younger kids, that, look, it's this quick that it can be shared. Hundreds of people can like something right away, especially when there's free access to something. So I would say use that example in the schools that you see, and use that example to show your kids that, hey, just as soon as you post something, it can be shared regardless. And it comes back to down the road, too. Kids don't realize that this can affect you in either good or bad when you're looking to get into school, when you're looking for a job. Social networking, the things you do wrong can affect you in a bad way, but the things you do right can affect you in a good way on social networks as well. So it's not necessarily to try to sound like we're being Nancy negative about social network, because we all use it nowadays. It's just a matter of saying, be safe, use your smarts, use your parents the right way, and let them help you through this process.
Great advice. I love that point, because there are so many good things there's so many benefits to social media as well. Jason Malika, board member of the Buffalo Social Media Club. You do talks like this in schools, and if people are interested in booking you, they can get in touch with you on social media.
Yes, they can. Absolutely. If you're interested, please reach out.
And you have children yourself. Are they old enough to go on?
No, but I have my youngest. My daughter always says, "Are you going to post this on Facebook, Daddy?" So I said, "Yeah, I'll probably post it." My son's always like, "What's Instagram?" And I always tell him, "You'll learn fast enough,
You'll
believe me."
find out when you're older. All right. Thanks so much, Jason, for coming out to the couch this morning.